So I used to work 10 to 12 hour days, like I'm not even kidding or exaggerating. And I want to tell you something right here. You have been lied about productivity. And the lie is everywhere, and most people don't even notice they are living inside of it. The lie I'm talking about is this: long hours mean serious work. 10-hour days, 12-hour days, grinding until your eyes burn. That is what commitment looks like, right? That's really what it takes to build something real, correct? Well, it's not. At least not eventually. When I work 8 to 10 to 12-hour days, I did get stuff done. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that I didn't. But here's the thing that I didn't see at the time, right? That I became to realize a lot later is that I was confusing being busy with being productive. Being on the laptop doesn't mean you're building. Being occupied doesn't mean you're advancing. And working long hours scattered across a dozen half-finished tasks is not the same as structured execution that compounds. Now I do things a lot differently. I work 4 to 6 hour days, maybe sometimes 8 hours. And I get the same amount of work done or even more than I was working, 10 to 12 hour days. And that's not because I'm working harder in the hours that I'm putting towards my work, but it is because my work now is far more structured and far more automated than it was when I was first starting. Because with everything that is going on with AI right now and how you can automate workflows and how you can systematize everything and how you can structure your work, it doesn't really make that much sense anymore, and it will be more the case in the future that you have to put so many hours into something. And I'm going to tell you what typically happens when you work long, unstructured hours. You're constantly switching context: email to content, to client work, to research, to admin tasks, to Slack, to back to email. Every switch costs you, not just in time and cognitive load, but also in decision making and in mental clarity. The way that most people work is just reactive rather than structured execution. The day controls you, notifications pull you, messages derail you. You start one thing, get interrupted, start another, check something, forget what you were doing, and end up mentally exhausted without knowing what you actually finished. And do you know what ends up happening and you start doing every single time that you work like this? You end up in loops. You end up working the same thing over and over again. You're redoing work that you did last week. You just don't finish up something, you start something else, and you lose so much time doing this. You lose money, you lose time, you lose years sometimes because your work is scattered all over the place. So nothing is systematized, nothing is templated, nothing is structured, nothing is prepared. Everything is random, right? You just open up your computer without even knowing what you're going to do. And this is how it felt for me, and it feels for you as well. You feel like every single task that you're doing, or every single time that you're working on your laptop, you're starting a new task. You're starting from scratch. You're starting something new. You start tasks and you don't finish them. And worse, instead of following up the next day, you show up with no clear path and you're scattered again. Because there's no clear output defined, no endpoint. You should, since you don't prepare, since you don't structure, since you're scattered, you just completely lost, and you end up just being 10 hours in the computer. In those 10 hours in the computer, you probably got 15 minutes of real work done. And trust me, this happens more than people like to admit, and I'm sure you have been through this or you know someone who is like this. Because look, let me tell you this, you need to hear this, and I wish someone told me this much earlier, 10 years ago, when I was starting in entrepreneurship. Busy work disguised as responsibility doesn't actually mean that you're being responsible. And it's actually you're being irresponsible because all the time that you're losing just because you don't have work that is a structure. You're just wasting so much time on motion sickness instead of using that time that that you're wasting to actually move the needle to something that matters. The reason long days feel productive is because they're occupied. You're reacting, you're mentally tired at the end, you're exhausted at the end of the day, and that tricks you into thinking you worked hard. And that is something that I had to learn the hard way. Being tired, being exhausted at the end of the day doesn't really mean that you got a lot done. And I'm going to tell you what happens once you try to move away from the mindset that you have to work 10 to 12 hour days just to get ahead. And what happens when you actually switch that mentality, and instead of working 10 to 12 hours a day, you work 4 to 6, but with much more structure. You don't waste hours on deciding what to do, and you cannot afford so many content switches. What do I mean by that? It is very common that if you just open your laptop and you start working, you don't have anything structured, you kind of wander around and you kind of like finish something half here, finish something half there, instead of just like working into something specifically for a period of time before moving into the next task. Structure beats effort every single time. And I'm a firm believer that, well, of course, hard work and sometimes it's important, especially at the beginning, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. But I think that smart work always beats hard work every single time. Hard work is important indeed, it has its place, but only sometimes, not as a continuity, because there's a time to cruise and there's a time to sprint. All right, and for you just to maintain momentum over the long run, because discipline beats motivation every single time, you want to ensure that you cruise most of the time and you sprint sometimes when it's necessary. What changed for me was planning my next day the night before. Once your day is systematized, tasks are pre-decided, you're not waking up wondering what to do. You already know. That change alone of preparing your day the night before, it actually is one of the main tools that you can utilize for you to not being lost on the day that you're working. So the night before, just organize the next day. I'm going to share you my notes over here and how I plan my day a little bit, and you will see that I structure my day very thoroughly. Have order fixed for your day so you're not bouncing within priorities. The sequence is set. Output becomes predictable. You know what needs to get done today because the system defines it. So trust me, if you're doing this yourself, don't beat yourself up. This is extremely common. I used to be myself that person when I tried to be productive. I believed that it was just being productive. I opened my laptop and I was just scattering in my laptop for just 3 hours without getting any significant work done. Fortunately, I was able to realize it pretty soon, and I was just able to know that if I'm going to be put in time, if I'm going to be opening my laptop, if I'm going to be on the internet, it better give me something in return. You will be surprised of how much time you can lose without making that switch. You can spend hours wandering around, and those hours they hurt you more than you think, because you might think, oh yeah, I just wasted 3 hours today, 2 hours tomorrow, 1 hour the day after tomorrow. Something that you need to realize is the business in progress is a momentum. If you are constantly breaking it, years can pass without you getting nothing done significantly. So I'm telling you this from personal experience. This decision time cannot be mixed up with execution. Do not burn energy, wonder yourself what's next when you are working on something. The workflow, the preparation, the structure before that should answer that question for you. You need to remove that friction and you need to ensure that the path is clear from start to finish so you can move faster. Instead of asking, what should I work on? You're saying, execute the next step. And that shift from deciding to executing is where all the time comes back. Effort without structure leaks everywhere. And this is funny because you end up with so many unfinished tasks, so much mess on your computer, so many things that are half done, and no direction at all. This is insane. This is really something that you need to get fixed because you're not going to move fast. You know, you're going to spend 1 year and you only got 1 month of real progress. Structure turns average effort into force. It channels energy into output. It makes 4 focus hours more effective than 12 scattered ones. And this is what most people do not understand when it comes to, like, you know, the new world that we're seeing right now with AI, building a personal brand, building a one-person business, that there's really no need to hustle. And you know, I'm a believer of hard work. I do not want you to get me wrong here. And look, I'm telling you this from a position that I used to be a huge participant in hustle culture. I used to believe that the only thing that you need to do is just work hard. I used to just be a big Gary Vee fan when it comes to that. I used to just think, okay, I'm going to put 12 hours sitting without breaks in my computer. I'm going to be working hard. I'm going to hustle. I used to be a big grinder. And look, I'm going to tell you this just so you don't get me wrong. Temporary hustle, temporary grind, and especially at the beginning when you're first starting, hard work is important. You know, I'm not going to tell you that it's not. The problem is this, is that hustle culture, or you know, grinding, never tells you when you're supposed to stop. And it turns working long hours, grinding 24/7 into your identity. The game now is not about working harder than the next person, because so many things can be systematized and automated that there's no need for it. The game is about leverage, and leverage doesn't come from hours, it comes from systems. So that's what the one person system rewards, leverage, not hours. Most people are still playing the wrong game. They're still thinking that they have to grind and they have to work a lot of hours for them just to be successful. And they actually not, because things are changing. You know, for example, myself, I don't keep my workflows inside of my head. They're completely written down. Everything is completely systematized. And by the way, if you want to see how I actually do this, I have a PDF where it explores all of my workflows, link in the description. So every single workflow that I have that I do, I do not start my day just completely from blank. I know exactly what I'm going to be doing, for how long I'm going to be working in that specific task. And that is actually what keeps me in the path of progress. In the world of AI, more hours do not equal more output. We do not longer live in the industrial era or in the 80s or 90s, where the person that works the most is the person that gets the most outputs. It's not true anymore today, especially when it comes to building a one person business or a personal brand, if that's what you're trying to do. I'm going to tell you what the one person business model actually rewards: systems that run without you thinking about them, reusable assets that compound over time, automation that removes repetitive decisions, outputs that generate results longer after you hit publish. None of that scales with hours worked. In fact, if you're trying to build a one person business, working more hours is typically a symptom of poor design. Because if you're working 12 hours and you're still behind, you're still not where you should be. And I understand that things take time, but if you're working so much and moving too little, it is typically a system that you're just wasting too much time and you're not actually working when you say you are. So if you're constantly busy, on reactive, on your computer, but how can I say this? The progress that you're doing is short, you're not actually running a business. You're creating a job for yourself that is actually making you waste time. And that doesn't need to be the case anymore, especially when it comes to AI. That's something that you need to move away from. Because right now, a structured operator that is able to use AI and is able to just apply smart work can do what used to require teams, what used to require BAs, what used to require 3, 4, or 5 people to do. Editor, researcher, scheduler. I mean, you can do so many things in a much shorter period of time with the AI. There's just no need for you just to work 12 hours on a task that it can be done in 4. If you're able to do this smartly, you're able just to remove friction in every single layer of your work. Because I use AI in a very particular, in a very specific way that probably not a lot of people use AI that way. AI is a double-edged sword. If you know what to build, AI helps you build it faster. If you don't know what to build, AI just helps you produce more noise. That's why people who work chaotically with AI ends up being less productive, more lost, and your workflows, your day become a complete mess. Because this is the truth, and you have to understand this. If you're stupid, if you are dumb, AI can make you dumber. But if you're smart enough to work with structure, AI can 10x your results. Because structure defines what matters, right? And AI can help you with the execution. So when those two things align, the hours that it takes you to produce a specific outcome collapse. It cuts from like 100% to 50% or 80%. So that's why you can work less hours and end up making more money. And that is a shift that most people, they haven't internalized it yet. They don't get it. You're not trying to work harder anymore, okay? We're not in the Middle Ages. We're not in the 80s. We're not in the 90s. Instead of writing every post from scratch, you build a template and let AI handle the first draft. Instead of manually scheduling everything, you automate the workflow once and forget it. Instead of reinventing the process every time, you document it, systematize it, and execute it on repeat. And in this way, you stop becoming the worker inside of the system and you become the designer of the system. And once that happens, hours become totally irrelevant because the system does most of the work. You just guide it. Now, I want to include into this something that is very important and something that I used to treat it as weakness, and a lot of people still treat it as weakness, especially all the hustle culture. Rest isn't laziness, it's a performance multiplier. When you work a structure, rest improves everything downstream. Rest improves thinking. Thinking improves decisions. Decisions improve output. So when you rest, right, it helps you appreciate your work much more, and then it helps you freshen up, and then once you come back into work, you are much more motivated than you work if you didn't rest, if you didn't take the break, and you just kept going and with less and less and less energy. There's no reason to burn out by working hard. If you're burning out, it means that you're working chaotically. There's something that you're doing wrong. I'm sorry to tell you, but it is the case. A scattered 12-hour day, constant reactivity, interruption, and content switching will destroy you. That is a broken structure right there. If you are working like this, this is going just to burn you out. You need to re-systematize everything. You really need to rethink the way you're working. Now, I need to be clear on something. This is something very important that I forgot to mention earlier. I should probably put this section earlier in the video. At the beginning, all right, when you don't have anything going on, when you're starting, you do need to put more hours. You do need to grind a little bit more at the beginning because you're laying out the foundations. You need to build the infrastructure and the foundation first, so it is crucial that you work a little bit more. Systematizing and automation requires a lot of upfront work. I understand that. But as time goes on, that hours of work should be coming naturally down. When you're first starting, maybe the first 6 months or something, you're probably going to work in 8, 10, sometimes 12 hours. If you have a job, you're probably going to be putting 20 hours a week after your job. Because look, a 4-hour workday that is super focused and that it helps you kind of like maintain a momentum and you execute 1 or maybe 2 clear outputs, that is sustainable and that is energizing. That leaves capacity for later, for tomorrow, and that is exactly what you need. You don't need to just to burn yourself out today. You need to be working tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, next week, next month. A rested mind performs at a completely different level. You perform far better when you're awake and clear than when you're tired and foggy. It helps me kind of like start fresh and get it done much quicker than if I would not have taken that rest or that break and I just kept going. This is going to take you a little while, but you want to get to the point where hours become irrelevant because pretty much everything that you do is systematized. And let me tell you this, work becomes so much more enjoyable when you are in that phase because you're not longer wandering or just reacting to instability. You're doing work that actually doesn't feel like work. And when this happens, life becomes livable again. The whole point of the work, the grind, the business is to live your life. That's why hustle culture will fade. The future doesn't belong to loud grinders. It belongs to calm operators, structure thinkers. So leverage beats volume every single time. Smart work beats hard work every single time. Systems beat effort every single time. And clarity beats hustle every single time. Back then, yes, like productivity used to be measured by hours worked. And we're still doing that a little bit with the 9 to 5 thing, although it's just collapsing. But I'm so glad that we're moving out of that mentality of confusing motion with progress. But I'm hope that I'm helping you see the other side a little bit clearer right now. I'm doing my best to explain it the best I can. Now, I know it's going to take you a little while for you just to make that shift and for you just to build your structure, build your systems, build your automation, just to get to the point. With the content that you're seeing right now from me, I can help you achieve that a little bit faster. And if you already know, I offer coaching and mentorship for this, link in the description. But once you make that shift, once you cross to the other side, there's a saying that's called you cross the Rubicon. There's just no going back. Working less, earning more, and enjoying life isn't an aspirational fantasy anymore. It's the default outcome for people who built the right infrastructure. So I'm going to give you 3 or 4 tips that I follow that I believe that is going to help you a little bit make this shift yourself. So the first one, and I already mentioned this one, but it's so important, decide your workflows before you open your laptop. Productivity doesn't start when you turn on the computer. It starts before. Before you start working, you need to decide on 1 or 2 major things, maybe 3, if they don't take that much time, that you're going to get done that day. You're not going to be wondering why you should be working on that decision. You're going to be working it prior. And that comes with my tip number 2. Remove decision from execution. Take the time to figure out what are you going to do before execution, before everything. There's a time for decision and there's a time for execution. There's a time for action, there's a time for research. You need to separate them. Okay, the third one, do your best, and how can I say this? Do your best just to build assets, all right? Not tasks. Most people spend 80% of their time on work with half-life of hours. Work that doesn't compound, can be reused, can be automated, can be delegated, can be referenced later. It amazes me how much people can overestimate what they can do in a day or 2 days or in a week and underestimate what they can do in a year and 5 years. So make sure instead of just doing the same thing over and over again without having a template, without having a framework, make sure that you build these templates, frameworks, SOPs, libraries, evergreen content, reusable prompts. These are assets. You build them once and then you reuse them indefinitely. You can improve them with time, of course. There's one prompt that I use, and if it doesn't work, I improve them from there, but I don't start from scratch. So one template, one workflow, one system that you work that it took you 1 hour to create can save you hundreds of hours. And that's what I'm trying to say, that when the assets compound, the tasks start disappearing. If the work disappears when you're closing your laptop, you should question it. You should be working on building things that they are working when you are not. Okay, another tip, do the hard work first. The hardest thing that you're going to be doing will require the most time, the most mental energy. That is something that you should be doing at the beginning of your day. Because typically at the beginning of your day, you have more energy than at the end of your day. So that is energy that it should be used for the task that requires the most. Try not to be so tired at the end of the day either. If you are overextending, you're borrowing from tomorrow. Make sure you don't do that. Try to do your absolute best to keep most days at a sustainable pace. Sprint occasionally, that's fine. Just cruise most of the time. Take breaks, sleep better, shorten your work time. That is going to help you keep a level of energy that you can sustain it for the long run. So as you see right here, working less and earning more is not a fantasy. I lived at the mindset that I thought that I just needed to grind every single day to get what I needed. And yes, it did help me at least. Look, I'm going to be honest about something. It helped me get the groundwork to where I am right now. What I'm trying to say here is that if I would have realized this much sooner, or if I would have incorporated more structure and much sooner in my journey, I would be so much ahead of what I am today. If you can learn from my mistakes, hopefully I did something good with this video. Alright, you guys, like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you get the PDF in the description. It's really going to help you optimize your workflows. If you want to see my last video that I did about how everyone is rushing right now to get rich in the AI era, check this video right here, and I'll see you at the next one.